What is up, everyone? I am Gregory. Today is my September wrap-up. Not a great reading month for me, to be honest. I definitely did not hit my goals, especially when it comes to Wheel of Time. I did start The Great Hunt today, which is book 2, but obviously I wanted to finish that in September, ideally, but I didn't even start it. I was still behind from August, from book 1, but I did finish this in September, and yeah, my thoughts on Wheel of Time, Eye of the World, Book 1. I did a whole dedicated review to this. Basically, I like the setup. The setup is good. I like the world generally. I definitely do not love the characters in here, but I definitely see potential. I'm excited to keep going, and hopefully I start to like it a little bit more. Not that I hated this. I gave it 3.5 or 4 stars or somewhere in the middle. But, 14 books of this is 3.5 stars. It's going to get old. But I think the reason why I'm sticking with it is the world, I feel like could be a 4 or 4.5 star world. And I kind of hope that I'm going to like the characters more as we continue to learn more about them and as they develop more. But yeah, hopefully I can keep on my one Wheel of Time book a month pace. And to do that, I'll have to catch up by reading both Book 2 and 3 this month, but I think I can do it. Up next, I do want to say that the reason the Senlin Ascends books are behind me is because I did an interview with Josiah Bancroft on Alan's channel with Evie and Chase, and of course Alan and myself and Josiah. And it was just a bunch of fun. I enjoyed myself greatly, even though obviously it's Alan's channel, so... And there was 4 of us, so I didn't even talk all that much. But even in the parts where I wasn't talking, I just had a massive metaphorical tub of popcorn that I was just devouring. And yeah, the first 50 minutes of that or so is spoiler free, so you can check that out if you're interested. I will link it below. Senlin Ascends is a book that I liked quite a bit when I read it, but then after part 1 of book 2, I started to like it a lot more. And then book 3 was my favorite book of the year, probably. And I'm kind of hoping the Wheel of Time goes that way for me. I like the first book, but I'm not in love with it. And then I just like it more and more as the series goes on. That's the dream. Also, book 4 of the Books of Babel, Senlin Ascends, is coming out in November. So I will definitely be reading that and giving my thoughts. Up next, boom, The Ember Blade. I am doing a live show with Kate, the Almost Book Doctor, at some point this month. It was the September Buddy Read pick for my Discord. And yeah, I really liked this. Definitely a bit better than Wheel of Time, to be honest, in terms of, those fantasy tropes. We had, boys, small town, something happens, displaces them. They have to adapt to the new world very quickly. And this book has, so many random tropes that we see in fantasy. In one chapter, we start the chapter in a classroom, and I'm like, why are we in a classroom? How did this happen? And then there's kind of a heist sort of situation at one point, and, traveling, questing, whatever. But I think the tropes in here are done in both well and in a unique way, so I really like this. Also, I will say, probably you shouldn't read the back of this book because it might give a little bit too much away. What comes to mind when I think of this book is just, it's a classic. It's a new classic. We've got, the 3-act structure, and then every act within the act has 3 acts. And this whole book flows in that sort of classic way. The writing style, I would say, is fairly classic, but it takes, modern things that classic fantasy didn't do as well and incorporates them better. So characters, character motivation, stuff like that are done very well in the Ember Blade. Even though some of the characters are very clearly fit into a D&D archetype, for example, oh, this one's a bard, this one's a barbarian, etc. But they're still done very well. So yeah, I'd recommend this if you like that sort of classic fantasy writing style, and if you're generally a fan of fantasy tropes, would definitely recommend. Up next, we've got Red Rising, and I think everyone who's kind of in the same boat as me is like, I really like fantasy, sci-fi as well sometimes, but I like usually gravitate more towards fantasy than sci-fi. And then I just like look at the last 50 books I've read, and it's like, oh, there's like 3 sci-fi books in here, and the rest are like not sci-fi, mostly fantasy. So yeah, Red Rising is like the classic sci-fi of the last decade. And most people seem to like it. Some people say the writing style isn't great in book 1, but it gets better. But to be honest, I loved this. I flew through it. This is the most bingeable book I've read all year, and it was definitely the best book of September for me. There's definitely a lot of like conspiracy theories that can be talked about here, and things are presented in a very like straightforward way, even though it's like a little bit over the top. I buddy read this with Casey from the End Pages, and she pointed out kind of the heavy-handedness of it, maybe. And it's like very provocative right away. Like, I believe like the first sentence of the book is, all men are not created equal. And yeah, basically, yeah, it's like a speech from the nobles and kind of talking about the lies of democracy. And they're kind of using this as the pretext for having a very class divided system. And like the main character's name is Darrow. He is a Red. And the Reds do a bunch of tough labor in the mines and don't have good working conditions. And they are on the planet Mars, and they were trying to terraform it so that the upper class people, the Golds, can come to the planet. And the Golds clearly hit them with all sorts of propaganda, and, you know, you can't really speak out against the Golds or else they'll publicly hang you. So yeah, definitely a lot of class consciousness, a lot of class struggle. Not hard to read at all, not very long. I'm definitely looking forward to continuing on with this series. I'm told the writing style gets better. I hope it keeps on being as direct as it was in Red Rising, but just with like slightly better inner monologues from Darrow. And I also like how this book ended. And I remember, reading The Hunger Games a few years ago. And I remember hearing that Susanna Collins got a lot of inspiration for that book from The Bachelor. And it's interesting because who is the enemy in a Hunger Games style system where there's like this just big, huge reality TV show, which is basically what The Hunger Games is. It's basically what The Bachelor is. Well, the enemy is the kind of producers or the people who are putting on the event. Like, those people are trying to make a good show at the end of the day. They aren't, well, in the Hunger Games, they aren't concerned about people's physical health. And maybe on like shows like The Bachelor, the equivalent is they aren't concerned with the character's mental health. And obviously going on The Bachelor is not nearly as bad, like not even in the same category as like going into the Hunger Games or being thrust in this world. But I can see where, that inspiration comes in, I guess. And, this is compared to the Hunger Games on the cover, and there's, like, definitely some Hunger Games sort of things that go on in this book without, getting into too many spoilers. I think if you want, like, a more, like, gritty version of the Hunger Games, you'll love this book. If you liked the Hunger Games, you'll love this book. I know that's not, like, a revolutionary comparison that I'm making between the Hunger Games and Red Rising, but, yeah. I enjoyed the Hunger Games, and I enjoyed this even more. So yeah, that's my wrap-up for September. I also read a decent amount of Gulag Archipelago, which I'm not enjoying. Obviously, that book's not meant to be enjoyed, but I don't think it's, like, really a good book to read, especially, like, pound for pound. The information provided in that book could have been done in a lot more of a condensed way. Like, all 3 volumes combined, it's like 1,300 or 1,400 pages. It doesn't need to be that long. There's definitely better things you can read, and I'll like kind of break that down in a video later on. And I do have to like read more of that as well, just to get a sense. Like, maybe later on some of my issues with the book get solved. But yeah, I would not recommend the Gulag Archipelago so far, at least. So yeah, that was September. Stay tuned. I might do a dedicated review for Red Rising because, man, I love it so much. And I just want an outlet to talk about my conspiracy theories about this book. It'll just be so fun of me babbling and rambling. So yeah. Anyway, like, comment, subscribe, and see you guys next time.
today we have on the channel, we are going to be talking to the author of the incomparable Books of Babel.